Hi, everyone. I'm Katrina. I use she, her pronouns. I'm here as your digital moderator, so I get to go over all the tech things. As always, please be patient. We're in the middle of a global pandemic and we're all sitting at home on our computers, and who knows what could happen. So just please be patient with our technology and bear with us, and we promise that we will get through this evening with a smile on our face. Back to you, Mary.
Thank you. I feel like a lot of the things we say in these virtual spaces, like I promise we'll get through it, is like a lot of encouragement that like some couples give each other on wedding day. So it feels like very apropos and full circle here. But anyway, I'm going to go back to the script that we have so wonderfully prepped for this. Thank you all for joining us this evening for a conversation with some of our really incredible colleagues as they share their wisdom on wedding planning industry and what it's like to plan their own weddings. I planned my own wedding, and it's a literal definition of the labor of love, and I can't wait to hear how other people have approached this. So hi, my name is Mary Hungerford. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm one of the Chicago regional representatives for the Stage Managers Association. Big shout out to my co-representative, Jackie Saldana, who is in rehearsal this evening, I believe. Before we get fully started and diving into our conversation, I do want to share a few acknowledgements. So I am joining you from my apartment in the Ravenswood neighborhood of Chicago, which is on the traditional, the ancestral, and contemporary lands of many indigenous peoples, including the Kickapoo, Peoria, Kaskaskia, Bodewa, Miakiwen, Miamia, and the Sioux tribes. And I just want to take a moment to invite those in the space to list out in the chat the lands that you reside on. If you don't know the lands that you reside on, Katrina is going to drop some resources for you in the chat. You can look those up at native-land.ca, or you can text your zip code to 907-312-5085. So I just want to give some space for people to drop that in the chat and for us all to engage with where everyone is today, because I know we have people from all over. It's very exciting to start to recognize the names and connect those with places, which is, I think, is something that has changed for a lot of people during this pandemic. And specifically, I should name a lot of white people during this pandemic. So it's super fun to see where everyone is in from. With that acknowledgement that we knew we were going to have attendees from all over the country this evening, we felt it was important to do a digital land acknowledgement in this space. If you've been to our events in Chicago before, we often share an acknowledgement that's very specific to Chicago, but we thought we would open that up a bit. So if you give me just a moment, I will share my screen. All right, so we gather today in a digital format, using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many Indigenous communities. This technology, which has become central to our daily lives, leaves a significant footprint and contributes to changing climates that disproportionately affect Indigenous people. Although we are here together virtually, separated by distance in different geographical locations, collectively we all sit on Indigenous land. Land once occupied and inhabited by hundreds of Native tribes, land stolen from these Indigenous peoples by European settlers. The genocide and forced removal of Indigenous people from these lands is a history that must be acknowledged, and the current struggles of Indigenous people must be brought to the forefront so that their plight is never forgotten. Just a big thank you to American Blues Theater Company for this language, which was inspired by the work of producer and artist Adrian Wong.
This is the Black Labor Acknowledgement. We recognize that the United States as we know it today was built at the often fatal expense of forcefully enslaved Black people. We acknowledge and remember those who did not survive the Middle Passage, those who were beaten and lynched at the hands of white Americans, and those who died and are still dying while fighting for their freedom. We remember those who toiled the grounds where many theaters have been built and resurrected. We acknowledge that while fighting for their own lives and civil liberties, Black people have envisioned a world that will be better for all of humanity. And I want to acknowledge our Christopher Maxwell and the Black Theater Caucus for this language, as well as the authors of the We See You White American Theater Demands. And for more information on the Black Theater Caucus and We See You, those are the two websites I just dropped in the chat.
And I also just want to quickly acknowledge that we are coming to the end of Black History Month, and that, of course, we want to be celebrating Black artists and Black voices the entire year. And just because our Christopher Maxwell was named in this in our acknowledgement here, just uplifting the awesome work that he's been doing on social to support our stage management community and Black stage managers in our community, and that is going to be continuing, which is very exciting. And you'll hear more about that soon. So just uplifting that here. I want to talk a little bit about how this evening is going to be structured. So we have three wonderful guest panelists here. I'm so alone and solo on the screen right now. Oh my gosh. We have three wonderful panelists here. We have, thanks Shameeka, Cindy Savage, Shameeka Danielle Choice, and Isabelle Rund are our guests tonight. Yay, here everyone is. So they're going to be chatting a little bit about their experiences. Cindy with her career as a professional wedding planner, and Isabelle and Shameeka who have planned their own weddings in this past year, for a little preview of that. So there will be time at the end of our evening for questions from attendees. As Katrina said, feel free to drop those in the chat as you go. If there's something you don't want with your name on it for some reason, just DM Katrina and she'll pick them up. So with that, we are going to get started. So Shameeka and Danielle, you're welcome to chill. You can turn your videos off if you just want to listen for a bit, totally up to you. But thank you. A big welcome to Christina Fontana, who just came in the room. Hi, you can turn your video off if you don't mind. Thank you. I love seeing you here though. Great. Well, a warm welcome to you, Cindy, from ILS Traveled. I'll let you start just off by introducing yourself and sharing some information about your company.
Yeah, I'm Cindy Savage. I am here in Seattle on the unceded ancestral lands of the Duwamish people and an assortment of other Salish Sea tribes. I started my career in Chicago, where I know a lot of y'all are, and I got a degree in theater. I worked professionally as a stage manager for a number of years, and in 2011, so it's been just shy of a decade now, I pivoted to weddings, first part-time in addition to the other things I was doing, and eventually to a full-time business. Gone through a lot of shifts over the last 10 years, but anyway, I've now been doing this for a really long time, and I love it. My business is ILS Traveled, and you can find me everywhere on the internet at ILS Traveled or ilstraveled.com. For those of you that are engaged in planning weddings, I do have a free Facebook group. If you search for ILS Traveled Community, you'll find it there. Yeah, that's my intro.
I love it. When Fredo, our wonderful Fredo Aguilar here in Chicago, had you coming in and planning his wedding, which is how we got connected. And it was so fun to originally jump to your site. And I recognized, in addition to Fredo, three other couples that I knew personally when that have been a part of my life. So it was super fun to see the small world connections, even though we have never met.
Yes.
Just super exciting. So I wonder if you could expand a little bit about what it was about the wedding planning industry that like lured you away from stage management. How did you make that transition? What was exciting about it to you?
Sure. Well, like a lot of you probably are, I was a company member in a theater company. For those of you familiar with Tuta Theater in Chicago, I was a company member there for a long time. And one of the things that many stage managers get sucked into doing, whether intentionally or accidentally, is planning things like annual galas and fundraisers. And I also happened to come into the theater world right around the time that the marriage equality movement was going really strong. I forgot my normal part of my intro. I'm queer. And a lot of my business is focused on helping the LGBTQ plus community and our wonderful allies plan their weddings. So between my involvement in fundraisers and other sorts of plannings in the theater community, I also was doing a lot of kind of activism work and protesting, and that landed me with volunteering for things like ACLU and Equality Illinois. So I worked on a couple of fundraiser gala type events for them too. And at the time, my older sister, who is also a theater person, was floor managing at the Goodman. And I kind of got this thing in my brain like, well, we could start an event planning company because this is a lot in common. And I keep planning these galas and it's kind of fun, even though it's not the same exact thing. So I sort of always had a little bug in my ear about it, right? and then I got married and I was like, yeah, this is the same job. And I kind of actually made an offhand comment to our wedding photographer who does a lot of theater, as well as, actually he really doesn't do weddings anymore, but at the time he was doing a lot of theater, a lot of concerts. And what we actually found him through, which was a lot of events in the gay and lesbian community. And I just made this comment like, oh, wedding planners and stage managers are the same thing. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, oh my God, stage managers are so much better. And I was like, oh, really? Huh, maybe I should think about that, right? So I, kind of had that in my ear. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll give it a try and see what happens. And when I had been planning my wedding, I was following a blog called A Practical Wedding, which some of you may be familiar with. And I ended up putting just a little bitty advertisement on there in 2000. Wait, what year is it? 2007, I guess. I have no idea. No, wait, we got married in 2010. So 2011. I think it's 2011 right now is the problem, because where did all the time go? But
Right.
okay, so so I put a little ad up and I booked a couple weddings out of that. I did a couple other theater community weddings. I love theater weddings. They're more fun than everybody else's weddings. Shh, don't tell the other people. But I've done a lot of theater weddings and they're really the best. And I kind of just did those couple few and I was like, actually, this is pretty great. So I took it up as we all need side jobs. Well, maybe not all of us, but most of us need side jobs. Let's be real. So I kind of took it up and it just grew pretty organically from there. My first year, I started in July and I did 3 weddings in that second half of the year. And then the next year, I think I did like 15 or so. And the year after that, I did about 25. And so I don't do that many anymore because it's actually too much, it turns out. But but yeah, so that's kind of, I just, and it turns out I really enjoy it. So what lures you from theater to weddings? Now, I will say theater is my first love, and it's still a true love. But you guys know theater is hard. Not that weddings are easy, because they aren't, but it's a lot of hustle a lot of the time. The pay is often not great. And, you never get to be home for dinner. So some of the allures of the wedding world are, for the most part, I work normal hours. When I have an event, or as I like to think about it, a show, I have one rehearsal, which is also full tech, dress, and preview. And then I do one performance and it's done. So if, you hate the show, like, it's over. Right? Now, unfortunately, if you love the show, you don't get to do it again. But, but there are some perks to it. So, like, I don't work nights really, other than Saturdays and the Fridays before them, or occasionally other days of the week. I don't have to dress in black. Not all stage managers do, depending on what you're doing on a given show and where you're placed in the theater. But there's no requirement, although you'll find a lot of wedding planners do it anyway. I really never have more than one super long day in a row. I don't do back-to-back 10 out of 12s. I do one 10 to 14, and then I get the next entire day off. And they feed me, which is real nice. Fancy food. It's usually delicious. And but there's 2 things that I find are really the someone just in the comments that 100% here for the free food. It's not free. I work really hard for it, but it is good. And
a really good point to remember. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Is it easy to be a stage manager? No, it's not. It's not easier at a wedding either. In fact, event planning, including wedding planning, is regularly and consistently rated in the top 10 most stressful careers, up there with flight traffic controllers and first responders, which because y'all do shows. It's easier than shows. But the 2 things that really draw me in are, one, you get to be with people on a really wonderful, exciting, happy day in their lives. And even when things go wrong, which they always do, because we all know there's no such thing as a perfect show, there's still so much love and joy that you can't. I'm actually literally goosebumping just talking about it, because you get all these good feelings from it. It's like a good natural high, I guess. So that's really nice. I am very careful and deliberate in what clients I accept these days. I was less so like when I first started my business, and I was just like, somebody book me, please, right? Like you are when you're a young stage manager. Someone wants to hire me, yay! But when you're older, like, do I want to do that show and give up my nights and weekends for it? Maybe I don't. So those things apply here too. Uh, but because I'm choosy with my clients, I love my clients. I have awesome clients. They're some of my favorite people I have ever met. A lot of them, for example, Fredo, to this day, I'm friends with after their wedding, and I get to keep up with them, which is awesome. And then the other thing that is huge in weddings that I don't think is very big in theater is there's so much gratitude. I think a lot of stage managers can probably count on one hand how many times someone has offered them a sincere thank you for the work they do. And I get usually more than one of those at every single wedding. My couples thank me, their parents thank me, their wedding parties thank me. And it is really affirming to just be appreciated for doing a good job.
I love that. What a beautiful call to power too. And especially in your experience, because you're able to like create your own work. It's not like working at a bar or an event space where you're like kind of like every Friday and Saturday in the summer, you know that there's going to be something in there. Like you actually get to be working and celebrating with people. When you mentioned getting goosebumps, it made me think I never thought I was the person to cry at weddings because I, up until about 2 years ago, hadn't really been to any. Oops, I was wrong. Every wedding, we're done. We're totally done. And I think it's that goose pimple moment of just like knowing that you're being a part of something special. It's like every opening night, right? Every opening night where you've worked so hard and everything comes together. And yeah, there might be some stuff wrong, but you're open. It's
Right.
that, except
Right. Every single show, every single show is both an opening and a closing night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of that, I know that's like opening and closing is the end. Do you mind talking through, just for people who maybe haven't gone through a wedding planning process themselves, what is it like from start to finish, from like I click submit on the contact us page on your website all the way through that strike the next day or the night of? What is that process like?
Night of, we don't work the next day. We take that one off, almost always. So it depends a little bit because as a planner, there's a couple different like levels of service that most planners offer. So there's two things, one which I think of as essentially stage managing your wedding, and the other one which I think of as like producing and directing your wedding, right? So the lower tier, some people call it day of coordination. As an industry, we hate that term and we would like to eliminate it because you can't show up the day of opening without ever having been to rehearsal and run a good show. Neither can someone for your wedding. So I call it wedding management, which is what the industry is moving towards. And that basically means you're going to plan it. And then at some point, a little while before your wedding, you're going to have a meeting with me and I'm going to download all of those details out of your brain and your notes and put them in my own really organized format, ask all the questions you didn't know you needed to ask, think of all the things you haven't thought of yet, and run the day. So that's sort of the most relatable to what stage managing is. The other higher level of planning is what you sort of were referencing there, which is kind of start to finish. We call it full planning. And that it most often means that the client has done some wedding planning before they come to you, because very few people initially go, I don't want any part of this planning and I know I need a professional to do it. So let's just get that from the get-go. Most people start something, they come up with an overall budget. Maybe they find a venue. Maybe they just start looking for venues or start trying to figure out what they want their wedding to look like. And at some point they go, this is so much more work than I thought it was going to be. I have no idea what I'm doing and I need help. And that's when they end up in my inbox. So that kind of process can be, as little or as much help as they need. But if it is truly full service, then my process is first a wedding vision, which you can sort of think of as a design and conceptual meeting. I think of the whole planning process in terms of theater because that's my background. And it's easy for me to think about it that way. So this is pre-production, right? You're thinking about what your concept is for the show. You're thinking about what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what are your buzzwords. then we budget it out, and then we go hire the design team, hire the crew, right? So for me, it's overall vision, budget, hiring vendors, and then executing the plans. Some clients will also hire me for design, and then I become also not just the producer / director, but also the designer of everything, and that involves some more creative stuff and bringing out the artistic side, which is really fun for me. Um, but that's sort of the overall thing. And then in terms of I don't want to take up too much time with too many details, but I'm happy to say more details about what the
You
internal
say your
process is, if that's
details
helpful
and
for you. Yeah.
say some more. I feel like what's exciting, what I really enjoy about how my partner is what Fredo was talking about. What I enjoy about tonight is that we have like, it's like part like the logistics and like what the planning is, and then part the celebrating of the people in our community who've also gone through this. So I say bring on some of these logistics, and we'll
okay,
those things.
Yeah. So for me, and every planner has their own process, but for me, I have a vision exercise that I make all of my clients do. And the purpose of it is to sit down and think about what they really want their wedding to be, and identify what are their top priorities, because there are literally hundreds of decisions to be made for every wedding. My planning checklist for fully planning a wedding is over 300 items in 7 categories. It's a lot. And every one of those items, there's a decision that needs to be made about it. Like, which is the vendor we're going to hire? What is the type of fork you want to have at your place setting? Like, you would literally have to pick that. So for me, I find it most helpful to have my clients really hone in on what is important to them. I bill myself as kind of a creative and alternative wedding planner, and part of that is because of my theater background. I understand that there may be a general structure, but you don't necessarily have to stick with it. It's one of the ways where I think that stage managers and other creative types can really excel in this industry, because so much of it is like, well, here's your wedding shoebox, just stick that there, slot A, tab B, whatever. But you don't have to do that, and that's why I start this way. So my clients come back with their top 3 priorities, and I also have them do a rank order list of the different elements of a wedding. So like, what's most important to you? Is it how things look? Is it what you're eating? Is it who's there? Is it how comfortable we all are, etc. And that's what I use to say, how are we going to allocate the budget you have? Because unless you're independently wealthy, once you start looking, I mean, anyone who's in this room right now who's gotten married knows that once you start trying to price things out, you go, what? You've like read on the knot that the average wedding costs $30,000, and then you're in Chicago and you're like, but it's $30,000 just to cater a meal for 100 people. So the budget is a huge issue. And I am a big fan of spreadsheets and numbers and saving money. And so part of my process is to make sure we know what's important, because then when we go to budget, we know what we don't care about that we can cut, and what we can't cut because it's too important. Because there's no, like I said, unless you have a trust fund, or your parents are loaded and they're going to pay for the whole thing, or you are, because don't discount that, some people are, but most people don't have a budget to support whatever has come into their brain, often from Pinterest and magazines and stuff. Everything you see pretty much on Pinterest and in the wedding magazines and on the blogs, those are $100,000 weddings, most of them. And the vast majority of people getting married do not have $100,000 to spend on their weddings. So the budget is a big deal in terms of figuring out, where are we cutting, what is most important, and how can we stretch your budget to go as far as possible and get you the most of what you want. It's all compromise. And you know this from theater, it's the same way. The designer comes in and says, look what I've designed for you. And the production manager goes, that's cute, but we have half that budget. What are you going to do about it? Right? So, there's less people in the room, but it's the same kinds of decisions being made. And then once we have those 2 pieces in place, it's really a matter of figuring out who's best for each part of the job. Weddings on average have about 14 vendors. This is everything from venue, catering, dessert, transportation, attire, stationery, signs, photography, videography, floral, decor, lighting, DJ band. And I'm sure I'm forgetting things because I always do, but that's why we have checklists. You don't have to memorize things. Memorizing is for actors. Um,
Better
so
to double check and have that information and not
correct.
leave something off for sure,
Correct.
especially
Yeah.
in I'll say like if you're kind of doing a lot of stuff your own as opposed to like hiring a company, like you need that list because you're not going to have time to think about that list on the
Yes.
day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I see a really great comment from Megan in balancing the ROI of DIY versus hiring someone and buying the things. That that is a big one because people think it's always going to be cheaper if you do it yourself, and oftentimes it is not. It'll cost you more in actual dollars as well as a whole lot of time and usually a lot of extra hassle.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
just
those
want
are
to make
yeah.
a quick comment. Sorry, just because before you form it, because I love this idea of this like getting both parties of the both members of the couple to like have this like vision and filling that out feels like something that is so often overlooked. I feel like very often it's like the bride has to do this, the bride has to do this. And what's so lovely is that is you're balancing that, like might be two brides, very exciting, might be two people who identify as neither a bride or a groom. They're just people there. And that it gives those
it might be
people
straight people and the groom actually cares.
Fancy that.
It happens.
What a
You'd be
weird
shocked.
concept. Listen,
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised on that end for myself, I will say. But it is true that like I feel like in theater we're so spoiled, and as stage managers we're so spoiled of like knowing what good communication is and being able to have that communication. And what's great about something like this is like for couples who maybe don't know where to start that conversation, it sounds like you're kind of catering and doing that for them so they don't have to start from zero.
And I do actually, the way I have my exercise set up, they each do it separately without the input of the other person. And then they have to come together and make a compromise vision for the wedding. So it you know, not to be like I force participation, but I make it very clear before people hire me that I want to work with people who are both going to be involved. I don't want to, nor do I like to work with clients where one person's going to do everything and the other one's just going to be like, sure, whatever you want, babe. It's not my jam. So there's plenty of other planners who are willing to work with just brides all the time. And I won't derail this into too big of a discussion about heteronormativity and sexism in the wedding industry, but it's there.
I feel like that's like another night for this space. That feels, again, we're going back to that after party. That feels like the after party version of this where we can all.
If you want that rant, it's on my blog. Look for Women, Weddings, and Emotional Labor, or Bridezilla is just another word for bitch.
I'm going to do that. I'm sure Katrina's like frantically Googling it. Yeah.
ILS traveled /blog, and then just scroll. It's in there somewhere. Yeah. So there's plenty of that to go around in the wedding industry. That is, theater for sure is more progressive, especially on the LGBTQ front than weddings. But there's no shortage of that.
Yeah. I guess this makes me wonder, like, I'm just kind of going off the rails of my list that I sent you earlier. Like in this process, like, is there a moment, like, what is the moment for you in this like planning? I know that's not quite the right word because there's so many aspects of that.
Yeah.
But like in the process that like makes that like fulfills something for you, like when you see the two members of the couple click, like, is there a moment in there that really resonates with you?
Oh, that's a great question. I love it when they get excited, because for me, actually, I'll tell you, one time I had a consultation with a couple and we were chatting, and at one point I said something which I say often, which is, a wedding is just a party where you happen to get married and you can have whatever kind of party you want. I mean, I say a lot of variations on that, and they just went, oh, you just blew my mind. And it's like, yeah, like you literally, in order for it to be wedding, literally the only thing you have to do is like go get a marriage license and have someone who's legally allowed to sign that thing, officiate your thing and sign the thing. And you don't even have to do that if you don't want to make it legal. Like that's the only thing.
Yeah.
In everything else, like, you can exchange rings, you can not exchange rings, you can have a wedding party, you can not have a wedding party, you can have cake, you can have donuts, you can have no dessert, you can have a meal, you can not have a meal. Like, everything else is options.
That's great. And I think that freedom is something that for people who have not been married before, that like, that feels like a mystery. Like, you never know, oh, you're supposed to do all these things. The website you mentioned before, A Practical Wedding, was a great resource for my partner and I. And one of the things I liked, because we did all our planning ourselves, that they do have a similar, like, here's all the things you could do. No, just pick and choose. Don't want that? Who cares? Get it off
Right.
the list. Like, not a big deal.
Yeah. We have, am I allowed to swear?
Do it.
Yeah. So there's this thing I call the fuck it bucket.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically a metaphorical bucket into which you chuck anything that you don't care about. So my perspective is that you should start by putting everything you've ever heard of about weddings into the bucket and then only pull out the things that speak to you. So
I love that.
yeah. Someone had Carolyn said you can have a wedding that's only dessert. Yes. And if I ever get married again,
put that in.
I don't know. My partner's not a sweets lover, so it may not work out. But
well, if you're getting married again, then don't tell him. This is wonderful.
Well, I already got divorced, so.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, great. Let's go. I want to make sure. I just want to be looking at the clock. I want to be conscious of time, and that we give it Shameeka and Isabelle a chance to share some of their stuff and how this might relate to you. But one final question before we swap on over panelist wise is if there are people who are listening who are maybe considering making this switch themselves into the wedding planning industry, what is a point of advice or two that you think is most valuable in that pivot?
Try it out before you buy it. Go find a wedding planner you can intern with. I'm not the only stage manager turned wedding planner in the business. There are others. And the other thing I would say is that a lot of people jump into wedding planning who without understanding that it's not just planning and managing events, but unless you're going to work for somebody else permanently, and there aren't that many jobs available like that, and most of them are part-time because of the nature of our business, it is also running a business. And that's a whole other thing. And it's more complicated than just tracking your expenses and filing your Schedule C, you know? So yeah, really think about whether you want to work for yourself truly, as opposed to like working for a series of other people that rotates pretty continuously, right? And whether you want to run a business, because it's not, you know, I spend more time running my business than I spend planning weddings. And most of us do. Because it's like, I have to run social media channels. I have to write a blog. I have to do accounting. I have to do all these other things. Like I have to get business licenses. There's so much to it. And it's not easy. It's as much of a hustle as theater is, with some perks you don't get from theater. And some things you lose. Like theater, if you are a person who deep in your heart wants to call cues on the beat with the score for a musical, weddings are going to disappoint you because they're not that precise. And I say that like that's a thing that I miss doing weddings. I don't ever get to call something on the beat of a music, not even ceremony entrances and exits. So you know, there are some things that are very different between the two, but yeah, I would just say do a little interning first. It is a different world. There are a lot of big emotions around weddings, and sometimes they come out in people's best behavior and sometimes they come out in people's worst behavior. And that is a thing you have to deal with a lot more in weddings than you do in theater too.
Thank you for being so honest about that. I think it's an exciting idea of a pivot, but I think the realities are also hard, are good to remember, so we don't just end up like romanticizing something as being the perfect
It's not
job.
J-Lo and the wedding planner. That's completely unrealistic view of what we do. It's much more like what you know and love as stage managers.
Amazing. Well, I think you've won a lot of fans here, and I think you're going to get a lot of people who will boost up your business. So thank you for sharing some of your experience. Cindy's going to stick around to the end for when we have some Q&A. So thank you so much, Cindy, for now, and we'll see you in just a little bit here. Great. So let's turn to some fellow Chicagoans. So Shameeka and Isabelle, you're welcome to turn your video back on. Oh my gosh, you did it at the same time. I know no one's calling this, but it was pretty perfect. Thank you for being here. So both Shameeka and Isabelle planned their own weddings, and maybe replanned extensively, maybe replanned a couple times. because you both got married to your partners during COVID during this past year. So I'd love to just give you both an opportunity to introduce yourselves. And if this is fun and not stressful, I thought maybe it would be fun as with your introduction, if you would share like a song or a piece of music that was important to you during your wedding process, whether, you know, walking down the aisle, first dance, final song of the night, because that's a big one too. So Shameeka, why don't we get started with you? Hello.
Hey everybody. Well, as she said, I am Shameeka, last name choice, like I have a choice in life. I am director of stage management for the company Impact. We work through the Green Lincoln, what we work at? Greenhouse in Lincoln Park. Yeah, there we go. I got married on September 4th, 2 days after my wife's birthday. Our people walked down our wedding party. They walked down or danced down to Chris Brown Forever because we wanted to make it as fun as possible. So they danced down to Chris Brown Forever. My god sister sang India's Irie Sacred Space for us to walk down to, and that song is like really emotional for us. It's just like our song, I guess. We walked off to Seasons of Love for Rent. So my wife isn't a theater person, or like she's not in theater, but she's a theater person. She loves musicals. She's listening to Hamilton right now in the kitchen cleaning. So, so we danced off to Seasons of Love, just singing our heart out. That was like the best of everything right there. And we walked into our reception to Chance, found the good one because that's my good one, and we think Chance is like our brother. He just don't know. So,
Chicago, you got a close. You have that representation. Come on.
3 is my favorite number. I feel like it's just there, Yeah. You'll find out one day, yes. But that was my intro.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Hey, Isabelle.
Hi, I'm Isabelle Rund. We got married just after Shameeka on September 12th of this year. Is that right? No, what was the Saturday? I've already forgotten my anniversary. The 20th.
It's a good night. It's good. You just throw out a number. We won't
check.
Okay.
A Saturday in September. I think it was the 12th. I'll remember in about 9 months. So I walked down the aisle to Annie's song by John Denver, which I think is about the most romantic song in the world. And I actually had 2 of my uncles play the guitar for it as we walked down. We had a big backyard wedding. And we walked out to, my husband is a big heavy metal guy. So I said, you could pick out one song as long as no one's screaming in it. We'll play it. So we walked out to James Franco by Polyphia. And that's my intro.
That's awesome. I love hearing that you both had family members who performed some sort of music at your ceremonies. That's like really special, and I feel like brings that together in a really beautiful way. That's an exciting connection point. And that you got married at so close together. I didn't realize that when we invited you to this, but A+ on our parts over here. Amazing. So I wonder if you could just give us a little bit of an overview of how you approach your wedding planning process, having heard a little bit about how Cindy approaches it from like a business end of things. And how did your planning process shift during COVID, or did you get engaged during COVID so you knew it was going to be this in general?
So we have been engaged for a year and a half. I believe in long engagements. I was engaged prior to, and she cheated on me. So you can't make it through the engagement, you can't make it through the wedding, so, or the marriage, So we were, like I said, we were engaged for that long, and we were initially going to get married in 2021 this year. And we were just laying in bed one day after, I had to start working virtually and everything. And I said, hey, babe, you ready to get married? She was like, sure. I was like, you want to get married next month? She was like, next month? I said, okay, a month after next month. She was like, okay, what we got to do? I said, I don't know. So I just started looking up stuff, and I instantly just started thinking, okay, we got to think of scenic lights, sound. We got, like, that just went straight in my brain. I'm like, okay, we got to be outside. It's COVID. Can't be around people. Tent or no tent. Nah, that's still breathing, you know? So like everything just started coming out from there. And we was like, okay, we not going to spend a lot of money. We doing this ourselves. It's going to be last minute. So we don't have money to send, the boxes and stuff to, can you be my bridesmaid, whatever. We silly anyway. We made a TikTok video, and we just sent that out to everybody that we wanted to be a part, and everybody had to send back a video of them taking a shot to say yes. And
naturally,
that's how that went. I made the invitations on Canva like the next day. Sent those out. Took a picture of the invitation when they came. Sent those to Walgreens to get more, everything for low price. Found my Walgreens discount on Google, so I had to pay that much for the pictures. And I mailed out all of everything, and I just delivered the ones that was around in Chicago. And people that I know couldn't come, I just sent them stuff in like their email or whatever, and called it a day like that. And I tell people, I made a Zoom link like. I sent out saying I will make a Zoom link and I'll send it out the day of the wedding. Inbox me if you would like to be a part of the Zoom link. And people started inboxing me. So we had a Zoom so you was able to watch that way or able to watch there. The wedding was outside in my aunt's backyard and the reception was outside in my backyard. It was like a barbecue.
I love that. I feel like anything that's like feels especially so much more home, like makes it so special too. Especially right now when a lot of people aren't seeing a lot of their family. That sounds so important and wonderful. Also shout out Walgreens. Yeah.
I also was like, because I knew, back to this budget thing that Cindy was talking about, I was like, okay, food is always going to be the most expensive. My family cook like crazy. Who can I ask in the family that's not going to charge me to cook? Who can I ask to do my flowers? I was just thinking about anybody in my family that I could ask, or friends. Well, I don't really got friends, but family that I could ask that would do it from the kindness of their heart. And that's how everything rolled.
I wonder, Isabelle, really fast before, and then I'm going to ask you to add this into your spiel here too, just because it is so, we talk about pay transparency and salary transparency, and Cindy gave us some like great ranges of like what the average wedding cost is in Chicago. I'm curious if you feel comfortable sharing like around what you spent. That might be really excellent for people here to know if they're planning going through that process themselves.
I spent a little over $800.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and well, that doesn't count my outfit because I didn't pay for that. Somebody else paid for that or whatever. That was a present, but yeah, I spent a little over $800.
Thank you. That's awesome. And don't discount people giving you things on weddings too. People come out of the woodwork.
Oh, I don't.
All right, Isabelle. Hey.
Hi, so Shameeka was way more relaxed about wedding planning than I was. I was your more typical type A. We got engaged in 2019, and I wanted basically the year and a half to plan the wedding. I knew I was going to be a super big DIY bride, so I wanted to like have time to search the sales, and I wanted to have time to make everything and feel like I could put everything together. And then of course, so pre-COVID, we were going to get married in my parents' backyard. So we got lucky right off the bat with, I always wanted to get married in the backyard, and we both grew up in a small town in central Illinois. So, so things are a little cheaper. You got to look at the location too. We ended up spending, I think, right around $10,000. I'd have to look that up exactly. At a certain point, you get to like the last week and you stop looking at the number. But yeah, I think we were right around there. We were gonna have a reception at a brewery after the ceremony. Sorry, I'm looking down at my cue cards here, trying to remember.
I love that you brought cue cards. This is so good. I'm so happy. Yes, you're both so excellent.
I also knew that I was going to be, well, at the time, I was going to be working up until 6 weeks before the ceremony. So I was trying to plan everything out and schedule it out. before then, because we planned our wedding 100% ourselves. So we wanted time to do that. But then, of course, COVID happened, and we had definitely ended up on plan E or F or G of what our original wedding plan was. We ended up having we wanted to keep everything outside, and we wanted to split up our meals so that people were eating in smaller groups. So we ended up having a brunch, a ceremony, then a dinner afterwards. And the brunch and the dinner were 2 different groups of people. And then, of course, everything that I was like, hey, we definitely have a whole 1.5 years to plan everything. We actually have like 6 weeks to plan everything. Plan all the details anyway. That was one of the toughest parts, is like you have what you imagined the entire time your wedding to be, and then you had to wait to see what the world was like, even at the last minute. But what we found, we offered a Zoom as well, but we found that a lot of our family members missed each other, and they still wanted to come to the wedding in person. So as much as it was a day about us, we found that a lot of people wanted to see each other, and that brought an amazing mood to everything. And I didn't have any work for 7 months, so I had plenty of time for my DIYs, as it turned out. I think that's the long and the short of it.
That's great. Well, I love, like, both of you have shared, and Cindy shared this too, with this, like, this offering of like wedding as like, it can literally be a party. That's like, it truly goes into how you approach it, right? My partner and I wrote a mission. We wrote like a mission statement on a Post-it note and just stuck it to the wall. So anytime we got frustrated during the process, we were like, this is what we're doing. It's for our friends and family who we don't get to see all the time, for them to have a big fucking party, because we're going to be married for a while. So like, we'll deal with our stuff, but like, we're all just together. And it's fun to hear you both like experience that too, like with your people coming together, especially now that that's really important. I feel like you both named this a little bit, but I would feel so remiss not to ask directly in a stage management association gathering. But if you feel like your stage management experience like aided you in this planning process, obviously there's lots of logistics and pivoting. What do you feel like was the most helpful in that, or was it not helpful at all? I'm sure it was.
I'm gonna go first, Isabelle. Go ahead.
Oh no. I was just going to say communication with guests was extremely helpful. We had our website, but then when we changed everything, I emailed everybody, sent out postcards, and was like, hey, check our website. And then like, you have to think on your feet. You have to figure things out. And with an outdoor wedding, of course, on our day, it also rained. So you had to remain calm under pressure and try to figure out what the other plans are. And like Shameeka, we had a lot of our family members help us out as volunteers, which was, amazing. So just also managing a group of volunteers that's also your family, and you also want them to have a great time that day. But yeah, and the biggest one that I constantly had trouble with, well, balancing this out, mostly because it came from my mom. But taking advice from others while still keeping your original, what you want your wedding day to be, was very much the stage manager when the actors want to change little details and stuff like that. But there was a little bit of that. So those traits.
I definitely agree with the communication, because like it was times where other people were communicating together and not communicating towards me, and I'm the one planning it. So I've said this to this one person, they like, oh, well, I talked to your auntie. She said it was going like this. Wait, you did what? So I go to my auntie, like, I never said that, and good thing I did go to the first person, because they would have changed stuff. I wouldn't have known. I would have got upset, So that was definitely making sure everybody was on one page, and then of course, I definitely agree with just both of your points, because there was a lot of moments where people were trying to say, well, I think it should be like this. Well, it's not your wedding, well, I don't think we should, I don't care. I want that, and not even trying to be a bitch about it, but it's like, it it's not gonna hurt you for me to have this right here, and you don't have to do nothing about it. I'm doing grabbing it or whatever the case is. Like, just don't tell me no. Like, this should not be my day of no. Now, logical things, of course, tell me no. If I ask for a helicopter, tell me no. Because I might ask for some dumb shit like that, but who wouldn't, whatever. But real time, like, granted, it didn't rain on my day, but there was, like, I tried to be COVID safe and only invite up to, a cap of like 25 people. People came with other people or, last minute people, and it turned about like 40 people. And I have to really stand on my ground. Like, okay, well, I said it was going to be this many people. I also said, if you decide to come, you're going to have to stand. Like, don't ask me for it. You don't ask me for any other way to help you out. Like, this is what I said, so I have to stand firm on it.
I think one of my favorite little quotes was like, if you don't RSVP and you come, that's fine, but bring a chair and a sandwich.
Okay.
We're not feeding you.
I love this call to action too, because like so many people, so many non-stage managers think that stage management is just about the paperwork, and like those, like, listen, those checklists, those schedules, I made a contact sheet to hand off to the venue on the day. So important. But I just like want to shout out that like, it is of course it's the freaking communication that becomes the most important thing on the day, because there's so many balls in the air. And I just think that's a great thing for everyone in the world to remember, that like, those are the skills that translate absolutely everywhere, which is so exciting. I'm just going off the rails of this outline I planned. You've both touched on frustrations a little bit. And so I'm like super curious, like we talked a little bit with Cindy just now about like gender expectations and things in wedding process. And like, there is so much of that. It was easily the thing that frustrated me most in planning a wedding. Was there any pressure? Did you feel any pressure from your families or anything like this to do some like traditional bride things or traditional couple things? And just how did you navigate some of those gender expectations?
We hit just one, actually. I think it's very well known between my family and friends that I'm the bossy one of the pair of us. So I was, the other thing is that I had the time to deal with all of the vendors and to talk to every single vendor and be the point of contact for us as a couple. But my biggest frustration came with our caterer, actually, who's, a guy from Monticello. He's a wonderful man. And we just found, hopefully by 100% coincidence, that when I contacted him, it was weeks to months before I heard a reply. And when my dad or my husband contacted him, it was about a couple hours. So that was very annoying. But if anything good came out of it, it was the fact that I needed to delegate anyway. So Drew was in charge of catering pretty quick.
I didn't have any like pressure from family to do anything specific. I have a hard time saying that word, but the most frustrating thing for us was that we did receive 4 no's from officiants. One was a family member who is a pastor. One was an extended family member who's also a pastor, and 2 were non-family members who are pastors. And it was the way that the no was, instead of it just being like I don't agree or just no. It was more so like, well, I feel that I can't put myself fully into it if I was to do it. Like, don't sugarcoat it. I'm a grown ass woman. Be flat out with me and just tell me no. So it was very disheartening. I also lost a couple friends. A few family members, like 2 family members told me like because it wasn't in their morals, they couldn't even come, and it was, and everybody that said something like this or just whatever it was were people that I thought was like my people, and I had like this one group of childhood friends that I was the only people that I still had from a childhood, and that whole friend group is just detoured now, so it's just you know, it, like somebody said in the chat, their loss. Absolutely. Like I definitely looked at it. And even my wife was just even worse. So everybody that was a part of the wedding was my family. Nobody in her wedding party came. Nobody showed up except for her godmother and godsister. They walked her down the aisle, and it was only two people that was there. One of her cousins that she hadn't seen for a long time was showing up to the reception, but it was even harder. The fact that I'm like, I'm looking down, I see all my family, and I'm like, I know, but don't even know what she could be feeling right now. So I have to really be even more of that security or whatever on this special day. Like nobody should have to feel down. We're both adopted. The lady that had me wrote me on Facebook on the wedding day and told me she was completely done with me because she wasn't invited to my wedding.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we had a lot of negativity during the time, but we just looked at it like these are all doors that God or the universe is telling us that this is not coming into your next chapter. You don't need this in your marriage, so let it be. And that's what I had to do, and I'm great, you know.
Thank you for sharing that and being so vulnerable and honest about that. I just shout out, it's their freaking loss. Like that is the case. And just thank you for that invitation that like people don't have to hang on to things like that don't accept people who they are. So thank you for that. I wonder, like, you know, I shared this a little bit before ever we let the waiting room floodgates open, that my partner and I joke about the best thing about being married is that you don't have to plan a wedding again. And I'm curious, like, if like looking back on the day, like, was there something that like, I don't know, is there something that like happened, like a specific moment that you're like, ooh, that was the mistake. Oops. Like Cindy mentioned, there's always like the one thing that goes wrong or something like this is there something like that you wish you could tweak? Or do you just encompass the day as being the thing that you now get to carry with you?
I don't have anything I would have tweaked. I just had like a regret because I didn't get to do my garter dance. And I was really looking forward to doing my garter dance. And I feel like if I would have had a planner, they would have kept things on task. Like I didn't do my garter dance or the toast, you know? So those are only two things. But I did save it by cutting my cake with a sword. I have two black belts and I have a weapons degree. I have some swords up there, you see. So
oh my gosh, yes.
I feel like that made up for it, but I was very regretful that I didn't get to do my dance.
I mean, there were like 100 tiny details that the day after I was like, well, crap, we never put out the program and we forgot to light the candles. But all of those things, you know, you think about them the day after and then you never think about them again. I really wouldn't change anything about our day. Even the mistakes, we had a keepsake box that was part of our ceremony and we forgot to put it out at the beginning of the ceremony. And something our officiant said reminded me of it. And I looked over at the table and saw it wasn't there. And I was like, uh-oh. So I looked over at one of Drew's groomsmen, who is also a friend of mine, and I just kept eyeing him, then the table, then him, then the table. And thankfully he got it and he ran and he checked 3 different places and found a clear glass box on a very full workbench and made it right back in time, like at the point of time when we needed to start the keepsake box. And everyone thought it was planned. You know, it's just like theater. Everyone assumes the glass was supposed to break on stage. So all those little moments are like the things that go wrong are the fun things that you remember. So no, I don't think I'd change anything again. We did it.
That's fantastic. And if there are things that you want to do again, you got anniversaries. Who's to say you can't do something again? Shameeka, bring that garter dance on back. It's fine. I'm sure your wife will appreciate it.
6 months.
Yeah, here you go. Before we bring Cindy back in and do kind of more of a Q&A with our attendees here, so attendees start thinking about some bonus questions that you would like to ask our panelists today. Kind of closing out of Cindy's advice to people who are looking to pivot, I'm curious if there was one like tool or a website or resource or a piece of advice for someone. We got a lot of advice from my partner's parents who eloped, which helped us like root us into like not being so caring, frankly, about the day. Is there something like this that you would recommend to others who are looking to plan their own weddings or to begin that process?
Then we both looking at each other like, who going off mute first? But I would definitely encourage couples therapy no matter what. Because if you're gonna plan, you're gonna definitely need that too. We looked at a lot of marriages that we know that has worked for a long time, and we talked to them, just give us advice, things to look going into. We heard a lot about keep people out of your marriage. We heard a lot of that. We also used it was an app. I'm gonna look for it and I'm gonna drop it in the chat box, but we did use an app that helped us just guide everything. And then of course all the apps for the registries, registry.com and Walmart and everything, just kept everything great.
Yeah, because that registry, I was all against it. And then we started putting it together and people were like, you gotta put more up there, actually. You gotta.
I was nervous. I was like, well, am I supposed to put this on? I actually looked at other people's registry because you can look on Walmart at other people's registry. I looked at other people's registry, like what they put, and what kind of stuff. So I saw people put like carpet, like rugs and stuff. I'm like, that's expensive, but okay, I'll try it. Somebody bought me a rug. I said, okay, I got some really adult stuff. I said, I'm a real adult now, so I was happy about that.
Well, and the nice thing is anything that's on your registry that no one buys you is then on discount for you to buy yourself if you really want it afterwards.
That's some real trade secrets coming out here.
Yeah, that's the good stuff. We used YouTube a lot for just about everything. You can find anything. We looked at the YouTube channel Jamie Wolfer wedding planning, and she has just a lot of videos about anything you could possibly think of when it comes to a wedding. And I, just with everything, she's like, you can take what you want out of this video. You can like some things, just say that, just personalize your wedding, basically is what she's saying. But then we use YouTube we made all of our invitations and found that online. But yeah, resources. There you go.
That's awesome. Thank you both so much. Let's bring Cindy on back in here. Feel free to turn your video back on. Hello, welcome back. Thank you all so much for sharing some of those experiences and just being honest about this process, because I do think that there's a weirdness that people don't talk about it a whole lot. Like you start, and like you were saying, Shameeka, you're like, oh, what do we have to do? Until you start really, really looking, there's just not, it doesn't feel like there's a lot out in the open to be talked about. So I just appreciate that here. Folks, Katrina has been keeping you all posted in the chat, but feel free to type straight into the chat or DM her some questions. I have a little list that Katrina has been so lovingly updating for me over here. So my first question, just to give Shameeka and Isabelle a little sip of water here, for you, Cindy, of the kind of two levels of service that you provide, management versus full service, do you find you have to provide both options, or are you drawn to one over the other? Can you choose to make that your focus?
I like doing both, so I do both. There are definitely planners out there who do either one or the other more often, and you'll find them kind of in the high. So it's a money thing in some ways, because there are planners out there who don't do wedding management, and typically their reasoning for that is because when you come in towards the end and you haven't been part of the planning process, a lot of people look at that as cleaning up messes that other people have made. The wedding industry has a lot of turnover, and there are every year lots of brand new people newly in the wedding industry without a lot of experience. Many people get into it after planning their own weddings with, unlike stage managers who have lots of experience in events, even if it's not specifically in weddings, many people come in because they did something for their own wedding and they thought it was just so much fun that they needed to make it a business, and they're green. They have no idea what they're doing, which is fine. Everybody has to start somewhere, but there are a lot of new people like that. And often when you come in as a wedding manager, it can be like working on a community theater production, let's say, where maybe everybody involved is not as professional or as experienced as you are or as you like to work with. So many planners don't like wedding management because it means they're often working with teams of vendors that are people they've never met before, haven't vetted, haven't worked with, and it can be really hit or miss. And that's absolutely true. I like it because I like meeting new people, and I have found some of my favorite vendors to work with because someone whose wedding I managed hired them, and that's how I got to meet them. I think when you're first starting out in weddings, it's hard to get full planning gigs if you haven't already done some management and gotten some experience. So it's sort of a rite of passage in some ways. But yes, if you do feel like I never want to do all that budgeting and design and woo-woo visioning stuff, you can only do wedding management. There's lots of people who do that. And who find it just to be the most fun part. And then there are people on the other end who, like I said, don't want to do that. And those typically are people who do more high-end weddings simply because in order to hire someone for full planning, you have to already have a pretty solid budget, a substantial budget. Most experienced professionals are charging in the neighborhood of $8,000 to $12,000 or more for the planning part. That's not the whole wedding budget. That's just the planning part. I start that high too. And I know it may sound crazy to you as a stage manager if you're thinking about it. One thing I've had to learn, which if you decide to go into this and you'll have to learn too, is that we are not our clients. My clients typically, either they're high earning professionals or they have family wealth or parents who are paying for the wedding. And that's how they can afford to pay for me. I don't leave my house on a Saturday for less than $3,000 anymore. But the thing is, it's not just that one day of work, as you know, it's like $3,000 for the whole production, right? So, there are people who specialize only in planning because they don't want to deal with teams they haven't worked with before. They don't want to deal with the inevitable mistakes that people make if they've never planned a wedding before. Is the three of you no doubt experienced, there were things when you were planning your weddings that you were just like, the fuck is this? And how do I do it? Right. And when we come in at the end, it's too late in many cases to correct those things. So there are things like, as a planner, that would be a red flag to me when I'm investigating a potential vendor that I would see 10 months before your wedding when we're hiring the photographer, the caterer, whoever, that if I come in 2 or 3 months before your wedding, which is what's typical with wedding management or day of coordination, at that point, you're not going to fire your photographer and hire a new one because you're going to lose a couple $1,000s in a deposit just because I'm like, I don't think this is a very good professional, right? So that's I feel like I got totally sidetracked from whatever your question was. I no longer remember.
I think you answered it. And I also think it's like, I appreciate, again, in the talk of like salary transparency and things like this, I think it's important to remember because for a lot of times when we do see that like $45,000, $50,000, $120,000 wedding, that wedding planning process is a huge part of it. And stage managers have, because our brains work this way, have a little bit of a leg up than maybe like someone who's just starting from total scratch. But like, there are people who don't want to plan this and don't want to, and would rather pay for it because, as you said a while ago, Cindy, like they know it's going to be done in a way that they couldn't do, and more power to them if they can afford it. Also exciting to hear the people who, we can make do ourselves.
Right. And some people make those choices too. Like one of the reasons that I keep wedding management on my docket, I like doing planning more, not because the actual work is something I enjoy more, but because it gives me more time to get to know my new favorite people who are my clients. And I like that. I like really knowing them well personally when the wedding rolls around because it makes the day more special for all of us. But I also keep it because, and I also have a wedding planning membership, which is like, if you stayed in it for an entire year, you'd spend under $500 to help you plan your wedding start to finish. The reason I keep offerings from all ends of the budget spectrum is because of the kind of people I like to work with as clients. And there are, when you get to a certain level, if you're only planning weddings that are $100,000 plus, well, you all can kind of imagine who those people might be, right? And oftentimes, my ideal clients are like chill, laid back people who more or less know what they want, even if it takes a little guidance to get there, and who trust me to do my job and won't micromanage me. When you get to people who are planning $100,000 or more weddings, a lot of times they are much more demanding as clients. And not everybody wants to work with, it's like anything else. It's not everyone wants to make a theater comparison. There's a difference between working in your community theater, working in a little storefront, or working in, a big theater, like something that's under a LORT contract, right? There's pros and cons to both. And so what you offer as a wedding planner in some ways can dictate what kinds of clients come into your business. And, people who have, a $10,000 minimum for their planning fees and $100,000 minimum for wedding budgets. And I know that sounds crazy, but they do exist. They're getting a different kind of client than people who are doing wedding coordination for $1,200 and not really doing planning. It's and some people prefer to work with smaller budgets. There's a lot of wedding planners who just absolutely abhor the idea of DIY. Like, I know one planner who's very well known in the business, and she like has it in her contract that she does not, there will be no DIY. You have professionals for everything. And if you have any DIY, go hire somebody else, because she's not doing it. Right. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I love DIY, and I'm happy to like take your DIY projects and set them up. Now, I might need to hire an extra person to help me on the day, and that will cost you more. DIY weddings are, they tend to be smaller wedding budgets, but they're a lot more work in terms of logistics and management. So I actually charge more for them because it is more work for me, but I like doing them. And some people just hate doing them, so they won't do them. So that's kind of a freedom you have in some ways, is in deciding what you want to offer as a planner. You can sort of funnel the kinds of clients you want to get towards you. That's not the only way you can do it. You can also do it by what's on your website and a number of other things. But
I think that's great though. And I think it, again, is a good reminder for people who are like, I'll make all my things from scratch. Like, ooh, maybe that'll be a little bit more than what we want. I just want to shout out, it seems like there was a lot in the chat going on about maybe honeymoon registries, which is like a new thing to me, but it sounds like you're just soliciting money for your honeymoon. How wonderful.
That's
There's some
a thing. Yeah, for real.
That's amazing. Well, thank you. I don't remember who started that, but I feel like we're all going to go away and like frantically Google that and see, the first place we're going to book an airplane trip to right after COVID. I have a question for Shameeka and Isabelle. What was it like getting a marriage license during COVID? And I think in general, getting a marriage license, that's something that a lot of people don't know about.
Okay, all right. It was easy. If you need to, so we got married in Pike County. We just went to the Pike County courthouse. So we were told that we needed to bring just our personal information when we went in there. And then our courthouse, I don't know if this is the case for most courthouses or anything like that, but we couldn't bring our cell phones in. And so we went and we got our marriage license, and then they started asking us all these questions about our parents. And I was like, oh crap. So, and then they really, and so like, where were they born? What are their names and stuff like that? So information, hopefully I knew, but I did have to leave and double check to make sure I had all that information right. So pretty easy. And in Illinois, you can have anyone with an officiant license do your wedding, officiate your wedding. So, and they don't have to prove anything. to the court, which is kind of nice. But they just have to sign the license later. So it was easy.
And if
Yeah.
I can butt in, that's true in almost every state.
Yeah, I agreed. It was real easy. We met up with our officiant at a bar like a couple of days later. He signed it, and we took it right down. We was already downtown. We got married in Cook County area, so we took it straight to the Daily Center. It was exciting. I had a big old Kool-Aid smile. You couldn't see it because I had a mask on, but I had a big old smile the whole time. And as well, they asked about the family information. We both looked at each other like, oh, how much do you really need to know, you know? So hopefully we filled out everything correct too. So I just can't wait to really frame it and put it on the wall, you know?
I'm glad my partner and I weren't the only people who were like, ooh, give me a second. Gotta text the dad-in-law. What is that gonna be? The one I feel like Shameeka, I think we went to the Daily Center too, and they have like just a beautiful photo drop, like backdrop of like palm trees. So like if you're really just there to like sign the thing and call it good, you can walk right on over and you can take a photograph in front of your dream destination wedding. It's, how can you not? It's right there for you.
Right.
I love that. I have a question here back for you, Cindy. If a stage manager is looking to intern with a wedding planner, which I know you had mentioned, what SM skills are the most marketable when putting yourself forward and introducing yourself to that planner?
I saw that question in the chat and I'm glad that we got to it because I think it's a really good one. Prove that you're detail oriented. As with any job, if you see an application, follow the guidelines of the application. Like if it says, send me an email with the subject wedding intern, like send them an email with the subject wedding intern. You'd be shocked at how many people can't seem to manage that. But in terms of skills that are most important, I specifically search for my staff from my pool of talented stage manager friends and the people they know, because stage managers rock. And the reason they do is because they are good at following detailed lists with minimal supervision. Your self-starter. So I when I'm working a wedding, I want someone who, when they run out of things to do, is going to come say, what do you need help with next? Or notice something and go take care of it. So that kind of self-motivating, I know there's a lingo word for it that I'm not thinking of, but when you it takes initiative, show initiative, that's it. Good communication is a really important one. At weddings, we are, much like in theater, we are the ones who are blamed for things that go wrong and often not recognized when everything goes right. Though we are usually thanked by family, it's the other people, right? But I often need my assistants to communicate with other vendors urgently and clearly as things unfold on a wedding day. So being able to communicate not only clearly and directly, but tactfully. Sometimes we need to ask a vendor to do something differently than what they're doing, or to set up in a different place than where they think they're setting up, or to change a timetable. And some vendors can take it as a personal offense. You know what I mean? And in the same way that you need to be tactful when you are telling a designer that their design can't work, or maybe delivering a difficult note to an actor, we need that kind of tact. And we also need the communication to be a teamwork communication, not an I'm the boss and you'll do what I say communication. We're the captain of the ship, but we're not a dictatorship. So that's really important to me. From a philosophical standpoint, as a stage manager and as a wedding planner, I believe that those of us who are very good at our jobs never have to raise our voices, because we start and we lead as captains of the team, not bosses of the peons, right? So what we all have the same end goal. The end goal is an amazing wedding for our clients. We have the same clients. We're all trying to please them. So what I need to be, and what I need my assistants to be, and other planners on my team to be, are people who can effectively motivate in a positive way, but firmly if and when needed. So those are the big ones, really.
Don't mind me as I just jot down effectively motivate in a positive way to add to my resume special skills.
Right,
just hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I'm learning so much tonight about like this industry and just about like my colleagues in this community who I have not seen in a very long time. I feel like Isabelle and Shameeka, you were actually some of the last people I saw before we went into lockdown when we went bowling approximately 1 year ago today. I have one final wrap-up question before we officially end our panel, though we'll linger if people feel so inclined for a little bit after that. And this is for all of you. It plays a little bit on the question I asked you, Isabelle and Shameeka, about like things that are perhaps expectations in weddings that aren't our favorites, perhaps. But for all of you, is there something in the like wedding tradition category that's commonly practiced, or something that came across every like wedding checklist that you saw that you kind of wish would go by the wayside? Is there something that you wish we could move past, or to frame it a little bit more positively, something that you saw on one of the many wedding checklists that you went, let's make that unique to us in a way that is more meaningful?
Oh, I don't mind going first. I would love to be done with forever matching wedding party attire. Can we please just be gone? I mean, the thing I hate even more actually is the bouquet toss and the garter thing, but those are mostly gone already, so I don't want to linger on them. But hey, mismatched wedding party attire is where it's at. Let people wear things that they love. Let people wear things that match their gender identity. Stop being a dictator about other people's fashion. Man, just let it go.
A+ to that.
I had a groom's mate, and he found a suit that was in the exact same color as the rest of my ladies, and so that was perfect. And probably my favorite suit of all time was that burgundy suit. I don't know yet. Shameeka, I got nothing.
As far as like the whole traditional, as far as bridesmaids and stuff like that, we had what was how people call bridesmaids. We had bridesmaid and we had groomsmaid for our men, groomsmaid. And like my bachelorette party was bachelorette, just to be different. We just tried to be as different as we can be. We was like, how do we make this the most different? You know, we had make sure our officiant says, thanks our elders for being a part. We made sure that was important. But besides that, I think we just tried to be as different as possible.
Okay, I thought of one. And I know there are millions of tiny little ones, but our biggest one is we wanted our officiant to know us as a couple, and not be just well, I grew up Catholic, so we didn't want a priest. So we picked my cousin, who knew us the longest as a couple and has known us through both when we dated in high school, when we broke up, and then when we got back together. So he was able to bring that element to our wedding, which I thought was very awesome. So I love that person. I love the idea of getting married by someone who knows that we'll do a good job of it.
Can I say something to that? I totally agree. One of my aunts came through with our officiant. He is a part of the LGBTQ community, and he has locks just like my wife and I. And he was African American, so it was just like everything was just perfect. It just flowed. It was like all those notes, and it just went great. Low key, I kind of want to show y'all a picture of all three of us, if it's okay. Can I share my screen?
Oh my gosh, I feel like we have to. I think I should have asked you all to prepare this, Katrina. I think.
Okay, I'll prepare.
Oh my gosh!
Wait, hold on. I'll share the wrong.
I feel like what Shameeka doesn't know is that like I low key love looking at wedding photos, even though I didn't really like the whole wedding thing in general was like I'm so happy to not have to do again. But I love stalking everyone's wedding photos. Give me more. I'll eat
So
all
this
of them.
is all of us together.
Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful.
And then I don't know why it's only on one picture. It won't let me change it outside of other pictures. This is our wedding party. I'm sorry, Cindy, we matched, but that was our men. And
You know what?
then
You matched, but you went on traditional because everyone's in suspenders and pants. Like,
right.
you have
Mhm.
ladies who aren't in dresses. I'm into that.
And
Yeah.
this is my ladies.
Let's have more suspenders.
Mm,
And then
I
this was
love
all
it.
of us together. I'm sorry how to keep pressing this. I don't know why my computer doing like this. I think
I'm
it's
thrilled.
being on Zoom all day.
I feel like it's just the innate joy that like comes through in these photos, especially if you do have like a bridal party or if you're taking photos with friends who maybe have helped you with the day. Like you just get to do you, and it makes me so happy to see those photos. Isabelle, I feel like I should also give you, if you have enough something pulled up, I feel like we need to.
I'm looking.
I should her last. I got to show off my wife real quick.
Oh my gosh, please. Oh, is this the cake? Did you do the cake on the nose?
Yeah.
You two are so very beautiful and so very happy. I'm so glad you shared that with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. While Isabelle takes a peek for her own photos to share, and thank you, Cindy. I see you dropping some of this stuff in here. We're gonna leave the room open for a little bit just for some casual chat and lingering. I have a formal wrap up to read to you all, and then we'll just welcome people to turn their videos on and hang for a little bit. But just a huge round of applause, celebration reaction as we go to our guests this evening. Thank you so much to all of our attendees who took the time to come out. We don't usually have this many people, especially outside of Chicago, who joined. So it really means a lot to us that you chose to spend your time with us tonight. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, we just hope you'll join for future Stage Manager Association events. On Chicago, this Thursday evening time slot is kind of when we prefer to gather, but there's lots going on nationally, and Katrina will drop our website in there that you can check out their events calendar. If you aren't an SMA member, please consider joining. It's a national professional organization that advocates for stage managers everywhere, not just in theater, also on cruise ships and at entertainment parks and in the opera and dance. Membership's got a ton of perks. There's a members only section of the website that place things like this video will be posted. So that's a huge, huge plus. There's definitely, there was a recording from this past year about SMing for drag shows. That's definitely worth a watch. And the latest cookbook edition might be coming. We're starting to advertise that at USITT. So if you're a member, keep your eye out. But most importantly, we get access to this whole community of stage managers like we did tonight, who talk about their sense of problem solving, work struggles, and just general camaraderie. And that's my favorite part about this organization, and speaking with all people like our panelists tonight. So thank you so much for everyone for joining, and definitely want to give Isabelle a chance to screen share while people are deciding if they want to turn their videos on or not. Isabelle, what do you have for us? Y'all have that same color scheme?
You gotta love the fall color scheme. We went a little different dresses on everybody, tried to keep the same colors going on, and then there's our wonderful bridesmaid. We were down a groomsman. Unfortunately, he had COVID, so he couldn't come, but Jacob did great. And then there's us with our puppo, because you have to have one of those.
But also A+ of doing the wedding outside, right? Dog can run around the whole ceremony. It's fine.
Oh, no, she would have been sitting right up next to us the entire time. She was stuck in the, I'll have to see if I can find a picture. She was stuck in the office the entire time. And so when she finally got to go outside with us, she sat on my dress the entire time because she's like, you can't leave without me anymore. But anyway.
That's amazing.